turns out that there's a giant focus group that's available, highly qualified, coming to your website, looking to solve the problems that your business solves. Why don't we find what they want, what's working, what's not working? And that's really what CRO is. Data plus creativity in a marketing setting. That was for me.
What is happening, people? Welcome back to another powerful episode of Marketing by Design. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Every guest of the show is a special guest. But this week, we are talking to the one and only Brian Massey of Conversion Sciences. Conversion Sciences is a CRO expert agency who has been in the game for almost 2 decades. Conversion Sciences was founded in 2007. Brian and his team are known for pioneering the lab coats as part of their personal brand. And I am a huge fan of Brian Massey. A little bit more about Conversion Sciences. Conversion Sciences is a B2B CRO agency that has run over 40,000 A/B tests on websites and generated over $1 billion in found revenue for their clients. They are one of the pioneers of CRO, truly. Like, they invented the term, brought it to market, proved the concept of it, and are one of the first agencies in the country to do this specifically. Brian Massey is the founder, and he's also the author of a book called The Customer Creation Equation, where he talks about his insights from running a CRO agency for almost 2 decades and everything that he's learned. Today in this episode, Brian and I are going to talk about why 90% of website redesigns fail, why most teams should spend their time using the data that they already have in their website visitors, why personalization on websites only works when data backs it up. And if you stick around to the very end, you're going to learn something super secret. And it's why Brian still makes time for bike riding and mountain climbing as a founder. Biggest takeaway from this episode, kind of kidding there, but you're not going to want to miss this one. I am a huge fan of Brian. Brian is the man. I originally heard his podcast with a friend of mine, Andy Crestadina. Those two are just complete thought leaders in this space. And I know that's kind of a buzzword that a lot of people say, but these people live up to it. These guys are big role models of mine. It was a joy and a privilege to be able to learn from Brian firsthand. And I hope, Brian, if you're listening, that you enjoyed this conversation. So without further ado, if you are a marketer and you want the insights of over 100 B2B healthcare websites broken down by 50 plus different data points, such as what is the main CTA other B2B marketers are using on their websites? How many of them run A/B testing? How many of them are built on Webflow? How many of them use AI in their headlines and messaging? We broke it down by all those data points and many more completely for you for free. We spent over 60 hours doing this. We're already deeply in the red. So to make me feel better, go pick that up in the first link below. That'll be down there along with all of Brian and Conversion Sciences information. But without further ado, welcome to episode 167 of Marketing by Design, featuring the one and only Brian Massey of Conversion Sciences. Let's get into it.
The biggest problem with CRO in 2007 when I started it is nobody knew what it was. Now, if I explained it to them, they were usually like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I was actually introduced to it by Jeffrey and Brian Eisenberg. There's this really interesting business school outside of Austin here called the Wizard Academy. Predates Harry Potter, but it's this marketing ad guy who was had a reputation. He was kind of a recluse out in the hill country of Austin. But you could buy his time for something like $25,000 a day. This was I think I first heard of him in something like 2004. And he started building this academy that's the stated purpose is we want to do on purpose as business communicators what great artists, what great writers, sculptors, anybody who knows how to tap into the heart through art. We want to use those skills in business because that's what we're trying to do in our businesses. We have a solution and we're trying to change the hearts and minds of people to move to this better idea. So that was their seminar at the Wizard Academy. It was my first aha moment. And in my background, I'm a computer scientist by training. I started my first business. I went into sales, actually semiconductor sales after that, Texas Instruments. Got back to Austin and started a business in the 90s, and there was this new thing that was so exciting called the internet and all the things you could possibly do with the internet. And we were just like, let's start a company and figure out what we're going to do. And we had a great run of that. Of course, we had 10 years to figure it out. Now we have this new exciting technology, and what do we have? Maybe 10 months before things are all changed. Anyways, the dot-com bust took out some of our clients and took us out, and I spent the first part of this century building websites and primarily B2B websites. And then I was good at building things, but I wasn't a very good employee. I didn't like just putting corners in the machine. So, um, I wanted to start something on my own again. And I don't know what else you do with this computer science, sales, marketing, entrepreneurial thing. But when I saw the Eisenberg brothers, I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. Data plus creativity in a marketing setting. That was for me. So put on the lab coat and started trying to convince the world that conversion optimization was the new thing. It was pretty quick. It only took me like 4 years to really start making money. And that was primarily when A/B testing came around, and that gave us the data that we needed to really prove that we knew what we were doing.
Yeah. How much is do you actually wear a lab coat like to work every day, or is it just something that's more like
uh, we wear so the funny thing is in Texas, especially in the summer, is they crank the AC a little bit too much. So you'll find the guys. Everybody has a lab coat, so you'll find them breaking out the lab coats. But primarily, it's me in settings like this and on stage, and it's not a gimmic. There's actually science behind this. Do we have time for me to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
I'll
great
make it
segue.
quick. So there's an area of study called enclothed cognition, and it's the systematic study of the effect of clothing on the wearer and on the people around them. They've studied the lab coat in terms of how it affects people who wear them, and they found that if you take a group of people, put them in a lab coat, and give them a cognitive test, they're going to score about 17% higher than a similar group of people wearing street clothes. So when I put on the lab coat, I actually think I'm smarter than I really am.
I've seen not to interrupt you. I've seen like studies about that. I think it's traced back to the halo effect, where like people who I think it was the one I'm thinking of is they put people in like just like doctor's attire, like scrubs, and people trusted them more. Like they just didn't even question some of the things they were saying versus like
Hmm.
streetwear attire. So I imagine like you could probably get anyone to believe what you're saying as long as you're wearing a lab coat, you look the part.
Yeah,
Like no
that's
matter
the other thing. You're thinking of the Milgram study, probably, where he actually was able to convince people to shock people painfully. They weren't actually shocking people, but it sounded like they were. Um, so yeah, when you're wearing a lab coat, people trust what you're saying. They tend to believe what you're saying, and so it's an advantage for me because I think I'm smarter than I really am. The people around me think I'm really smarter than I really am, and this is ultimately what we're trying to do with science on the web. We are trying to get an unfair advantage using data and experimentation and what we learn. So that's it.
Yeah, I love it. I just had kind of a funny fantasy where it's like you guys are in an office park and all your employees are showing up with a lab coat, and I was like, "What are they doing in there?" Um, but no, that's for my own imagination. Um, well, more to the company now. I think it's a very good premise to base y- the value prop of the company around this objectivity. It's like no, don't guess sort of philosophy. Um, Especially in marketing where it's a very traditionally, you know, very hard attribution has always been like the crux of a lot of internal conversations of like, hey, how can we justify the investment of this? And traditionally, what I've found both in house and just doing my own thing is that the closer the company can position themselves to A, being defensible by revenue, or B, just closer to the revenue as a whole. That's why sales is always very valued internally. It's very easy to defend. Whereas marketing a lot of times is viewed, unfortunately, as a cost center. So I think you've done a great job in positioning yourself, towards being factual, objective. Can you talk to me a little bit about like the process of CRO, how you guys really try and ground yourself in data and really stick to like the scientific value prop that you guys have as a company?
Yeah, sure. So let me start a little bit conceptual. CRO is just redesigning your website. So right now, even today in 2026, 90% of website redesigns happen this way. Oh, it's time to refresh the website. Let's get a small team of smart people, have them make tens of thousands of decisions about how it should be designed and what should go on it. And after they've been doing that for 6, 12 months, we're going to push all those assumptions out all at once. That's usually when we get a call. Um, Beautiful website, objectively better, better UI, better language, more well thought out, lower conversion rate. And it just means that a few of the assumptions they made more poor assumptions than good assumptions. So the missing piece of this is just what your visitors really do want. Uh, Marketing people understand focus groups. We can get 10 or 12 people in. We can have them look. We can watch them use the site and see where they're messing up. But it turns out that there's a giant focus group that's available, highly qualified, not just people that you've managed to, give a Starbucks card to come into your conference room for half a day, coming to your website, looking to solve the problems that your business solves. Why don't we find what they want, what's working, what's not working? And that's really what CRO is. We do use customer research, but ultimately we want to use experiments on the website to find out almost any question you can ask about the business. What sort of language do they want to use? Um, how do they want to lay this out when we're laying out our value proposition for our human resources software? Where do we start and where do we end? What images should we be using on the site? When they are at different stage of the buying station, what calls to action will they respond to? We have the ability to answer these questions. Then you get down to things like, even in the e-commerce world, can I raise my prices without lowering my revenue? Basic business questions like that. And so that's what CRO is. It is answering questions for the business using the website as a giant, delicious experimentation platform where the statistics keep you from making bad decisions.
Yeah, I love that. Um, I think too, a lot of times when people hear CRO, they just think of like the very basic, probably not nearly as in-depth stuff that you guys do is like changing the text on CTAs or like changing a headline. When in actuality, especially in we don't do a lot of work in e-commerce, so I will speak to the complexity of it. But when it comes to CRO and e-commerce, there's like a million different like small strings you can pull. Then you're like going into things like pop-ups, like user engagement, the chatbots, widgets. I was on this isn't e-commerce, but I was on Stripe's website just last a couple of days ago, and they started a feature where it's like uh to personalize it was on the top of the screen. It was like a personalize the website to you. And basically you click on it and then it gave you like three multiple choice questions like who you are, what industry you in, what industry you in. And it like rebuilt the whole homepage for like that. Like I said, what I did, companies we serve, things like that. Maybe that's a sign of where things are headed. I don't think a lot of companies are that forward thinking um or we certainly haven't worked that into our process yet. But
Well, here's the
when you talk
rub
about
with personalization. So personalization has been around for a long time. Um, the key to personalization is these great databases. So you can actually know who's coming to your website. So I know that this is somebody who's been to two of my competitors and been to my website twice and is an employee in a company that is in our target market. So this looks like a great employee, a great opportunity. What do you do with
Mhm,
that?
yeah.
Like, how do you change the website for that person? There's only one way to really find that out. And what we found is that when we do an A/B test, then personalization gets pretty easy. Simple example. You have a website that people are coming on mobile. You do a test. The test is inconclusive. You dig in, you find out that Apple, iOS people loved your change. Android people hated your change. Simple personalization. You show a different site to each of those, at least in that situation. So that way the data is informing the personalization rather than like, this is a good lead. So let's offer him an Amazon card or something like that. Or discount doesn't usually apply in B2B, but you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you offer
Yeah.
them? You can find out through
One of the
experimentation.
Yeah, I love that. Personalization is the one of the most underlooked assets, I think, too. And I think when people think B2B websites, a lot of times they think it has to be very corporate, very washed up. And we've just seen, especially in the last couple of years, more, especially on the content side, all areas of marketing, like how much that's trending towards like B2C behavior in terms of personalization, lack of professional, corporate lingo. People are, I think, are getting really turned off by that these days.
Business
One of my
people
favorite,
are people. They're people. They're humans. They have,
right? Yeah. At the end of the day, and that's what I think that's what you and Andy talked about in your podcast, which was really good, by the way. Um, the At the end of the day, like you're trying to optimize sites for increasingly over time, you get a lot of peer pressure to optimize for machines. But at the end of the day, the person that's going to click the final like purchase button is always going to be a human.
hmm
So, um, but yeah, one of my favorite examples is just kind of a tangent, but one of my favorite examples of personalization is I'm in a like a marketer creator community. Shout out to Jay Klaus, but he has his website personalized. So I'm sure he uses some kind of cookie mechanism. But when you log on to his website after you've like joined his community, his homepage says, "Hey, you're one of our favorite people. What do you want to do next?" or something like that. Uh, it's really cool. I mean, especially when it's so hard to stick out nowadays. Like I saw a SEMrush data chart of like how many websites are indexed now just in the past couple of years, just gone like up and to the right just because of AI and stuff and how easy it is to deploy. Um, Creating something that memorable that people actually remember like later. I think a lot of sites and a lot of things that I see nowadays in B2B is kind of like doom scrolling.
hmm
Like I get caught in this trap way too much where it's like you're scrolling through Instagram, sometimes even LinkedIn these days is kind of veering towards that trend. And like after 30 minutes, you don't even remember like half the thing. Like if someone asked me like, what did you watch or what did you learn?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell anything.
The one or two
Um,
things that you might have shared with someone else will be what you remembered because you attach some sort of kinetic memory to that sort of thing. Um,
yeah,
so if your listeners are listening to this example you gave, let's kind of walk through this. So they're going to go in tomorrow and they're going to say, you know what? I've been hearing all this stuff about storytelling and going ahead and using emotional in a B2B sell, and I think we should go and do these things. And then as it goes through the gauntlet of naysayers and brand guardians and stuff like that, it becomes, yeah, we'll just kind of keep doing what we're doing. Especially, this late in the year, maybe you're behind on your lead quota, you start playing it safe. Well, if
yeah,
you can do an experiment on this great focus group that's coming to your website, say, like, what if we tried something a little crazy because it's working for other people and we don't want to be outdone? Give it a test. Uh, Try that friendly emotional thing on one of your B2B landing pages and let the data tell you. It could completely revolutionize the way your, brand voice enters the marketplace.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I think. Do you mind if I get like kind of technical and ask some technical questions? Tell me about for people that are listening, like if they wanted to get into like experimental website behavior, run an A/B test, things like that. Are there any software or tools that make it more accessible, or maybe things that you guys use um, that not just help like conduct A/B tests, website experiments, things like that, but you've seen that have gotten the best results for you guys?
Yeah, so it's an interesting time now that there's all sorts of new tools coming online, being driven by, well, it's easy to build them now because you just point Claude or Codex at a server and it'll build a testing tool for you. um, the traditional tools. So the A/B testing tools are really powerful because the way they work is they change your visitor's browser or your website in your visitor's browser. So your server thinks it's serving the same thing, but the software is injecting a little bit of JavaScript or CSS and changing it so that you can have half the people seeing what's coming off the server and half the people seeing a variation. And then you do the little bit of statistics and figure out which one of those is generating the most leads for you. Um, so, those tools are pretty well known. We've been working with convert.com for a while. The market leaders are more expensive, but Convert is one out of Romania. Uh, so this would be actually a really good question to ask an agent to go out and see what's going on. Now there are tools that will do the A/B testing and statistics for you, but also will code the tests, will do the scan the site and give you suggestions. And uh, one of the things that's happening right now is you can go to Claude and say, give me 10 good ideas for improving my website. And it'll go out and scan it and it'll give you 10 objectively good ideas. These are good ideas. Half of those are not going to improve the conversion rate. The key is to find out which of the ones do so that you begin to learn something about your visitors that you can use over and over again. So right now, I think there's going to be a period of a lot of disappointment where it's like, oh, these are great ideas. You make the changes on your website and nothing changes. Um, but likewise, the language models are going to keep getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and they may be able to digest all of the experience and anticipate what an A/B test would result in. Those are the sorts of things, of course, that keep me awake at night. But our goal is
Yeah.
to make the website, the web better. So it's all working towards the same goal, right?
Yeah.
And I might have gotten away from your original question. Oh, just how you get started. I think right now it's uh, that A/B testing tool is really important, and the other piece is the analytics piece. There is a fantastic tool. Don't know if you mind me um,
Go for it.
pumping a tool. We're not an investor in that tool or anything. It's called EverOpt, and for those of you that have Google Analytics, it is a spectacular tool for getting questions answered. It is really, really smart. So it's at get-everopt.com.
Nice.
So these tools are coming online. You don't have the other barrier to entry for, the reason people hired us is because analytics is opaque and you have to set it up right. And then you have to pulling the reports out of it is only getting harder over time. Um, that problem is going to be fixed very, very quickly with
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah. I think too, like a lot of marketers um, have their experience with data when it comes to the website side is so, just in my experience talking to marketers, it's always so elementary. Like I think there's so much opportunity just in the website being something that's faster moving and moves and you can reposition itself more quickly based on customer insights feedback. I think that's where the biggest opportunity is going to come from all the new tech because that's where the biggest pain point has been. Like a lot of marketers either listen, they probably think that they're embarrassed to show websites to their website to their investors because it's like a reflection of them for better or worse. And I think even if they're not working with an agency, there's so much opportunity for them to ground their website in data, like ground their website in actual user feedback, testimonials, conduct those interviews and, as close as you can, like say this is factually what should be there, which is what you guys do. Um, so yeah, that's awesome.
And it's, the in the past, what we've done is we've used the testing tools as a personalization tool. So when we have a winning combination, we drive 100% of the traffic to that winning variation. So we can start, and it's kind of like working around IT. And then you give the changes to IT and they schedule it into their next sprint or some of our clients have run our tests for a year, um, using the testing tool because the, the back end changes are so slow. Um, AI is going to make those changes faster and faster. So I think you're right. AI is accelerating things on both ends, both learning and on being able to change it on the back end.
Yes, and I will say too that also and this is kind of going back to you, and this is probably a lot of recency bias because I did just re-listen to your and Andy's interview. But think about what becomes increasingly valuable, like especially as agencies, it's going to be the interpretation and the implementation of what the data tells you. Like there's going to be an increasing amount, like a 301 example of this is literally Google Analytics all this data in the world, right? Like at our fingertips, so inaccessible, so overwhelming, and therefore a lot of lack of action. So I think there's going to be an element of it too. While there is all this feedback and information, like the discernment and like um, the human trust to say like this is the path that we should go now that we have all this information is going to be increasingly valuable, and sometimes something that's going to be the value of agencies and things like that moving forward. Would you agree with that, or would you think that the increased like access to the tools is going to like go a different route?
No, I think I think that, as I said, there's gonna be certain things that are just very well set for the language models. As you said, I think experience and discernment has a place. Um, the question is, is that going to, is which on the K graph is that going to be? Is that going to become more and more valuable, or is it become, is it going to become more and more commodity as kind of a adjacent to the language models? Because there's going to be a bunch of people out there who aren't doing what they used to do. I don't sit and write reports anymore. I have them all generated. So does that make me more valuable or less valuable?
Yeah, yeah. I struggle with that sometimes too. Is I started. I have a design background. I worked like in house at an agency. It was very templatized type of work. Like literally using Adobe Illustrator to run like template proofs for production. Was a lot of physical print work and things like that. And I think like if you distill down, like kind of like you said on that sliding scale, you have to know like I don't want this whole conversation to be about AI, but it really forces you to just it can be kind of like a shot when you see things that used to take you like hours are just like done in seconds. But then you have to really think like, okay, how can I be empowered by that and not let it be defeated? Because I've seen it, and um, yeah, just really focus. It's really forces you to focus on where the highest leverage activities are. I think it's of like a really good analogy for business as a whole too is as you grow a company, as you take on different roles as the company grows, like you have to the the things that you do in a day shift, and the actions that happen outside the company and things that you can't control, you just have to shift your activities to meet where the value is. I think the best takeaway would be to like, how am I passing along the value to our clients more rather than saying like, how are we shortcutting the work that the clients are paying us to do ourselves, which might be kind of a roundabout answer to that. Um, but when you think about like the differences between like maybe your internal processes now versus when you first started the company, how has your like job role changed like from the beginning to what your day in the life looks like now? Probably a lot more stuff like this, more higher level things. But can you talk about the difference between um, what your job description looked like when you first started versus now?
Yeah, so a few things, and I think this is going to be seen by other agencies and certainly being seen by our clients, and that is right now AI is upscaling our ability. So, a deliverable to a client used to be limited to, I've allocated 2 hours to this. I'm going to go do the analysis. And when I get to the end of that 2 hours, I have an answer. And, that's what I deliver. Now, within 10 minutes, I can have that analysis done and 4 or 5 caveats. Like, okay, so I've done that. And now I can try these other segments that, might be rabbit holes, dead ends. And that's the thing in our business is we do these analyses. Sometimes when we get to the end, it's like, oh no, there's no effect there. So don't have anything to share after spending an hour working on it. We can chase down these things. So the quality of our deliverables has gone up. Um, and in this business, especially in CRO, you have to have this natural curiosity. So we have a tendency to start asking more and more questions. I mean, it's fun. It's fun. Um, So we're actually creating more work for ourselves, setting higher expectations, and that's the place that we're in right now. But the flip side of that is, um, we've got a coding agent so that now our conversion scientists can actually generate test code. We don't have to go through our dev team for that. We've got a QA agent that is making it infinitely faster to QA a test and catching more errors in the meantime. We've got an analytics analysis where we walk the site, we see what events are being fired and seeing where the blind spots are that we're not getting data. Um, and so, you know, at the outset, it looks like we're going to be able to bring on more clients without increasing the size of the team. But the nature of the work is also going to change. Um, it's like the bank tellers. When ATMs came out, everybody said the bank teller job is over. People are just going to, put their card in and get their money. And it turns out that over the time that ATMs grew, the number of bank tellers also grew because it changed the business model of the banks. They could have more physical branches. And so we need to see what those effects are going to be. Um, Businesses that are, agencies that charge by the hour, there's going to be a really interesting transition for that. I don't know. I don't know how you go from measuring a human's hour to getting paid for a human using AI for 10 minutes. That's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, it's people spend a lot of time, probably too much time talking about it, just because it's easy to get blown away by a tool that's so infinitely impressive. But at the end of the day, it's about how you leverage it, and where you point the metaphorical gun in the direction. So um, but yeah, like what are some of the I like focus more on telling your story too. Like, what are you kind of like outside of work for the audience? Are you a scientist by night too? Do you do any like crazy hobbies or like hunting or I don't know why I thought of hunting, but like anything, what do you like outside of the lab coat?
You wouldn't know it to look at me, but I spend my time on a road bike. No engine.
I was gonna be my next guest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every summer, me and some friends, we get on a 7-day road cycling tour where we're like riding 60 to 100 miles a day and then camping and riding another 600 miles. And it's through the mountains, so it's a nice challenge. It's something we have to train all year for. So I use that to keep me in shape, and I like that meditative state of just pedaling, and finding yourself at the top of a 23-mile, 5,000-foot climb and still breathing. Um, so that I'm, obviously in my business, I'm big into psychology and philosophy and the way that humans work. So if I'm reading, it's usually something about Jung or quantum physics, the nature of reality, those sorts of things. Because, there are experiments to test reality too.
You remind me of you ever heard of Andrew Huberman? He has a podcast called
Oh, yes.
Huberman Lab.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
watched a number of
You remind me of
Hubermans.
him,
Oh,
kind
really?
of like, yeah, like not a little bit from looks, the beard and the hair. Um, but like the way you talk, and like his away from desk work is like very exercise intensive too. And, he talks a lot about like the flow states of both deep work, because he was a professor at Stanford, spent like hundreds of hours researching a lot of complex studies. And like the balancing act of like my other flow state is doing intensely hard activity, physical activity.
Yeah. He's a great communicator, so I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, his podcast is awesome. Um, I'll get him on the show one day. We'll see. Um, but yeah, man, I think it's a great place to land a plane. I said I've been of yours for a while. I highly encourage to get the audience to check out your book, The Customer Creation Equation. It's a bestseller on Amazon. Um, Head to your website, word from your guys' content, blog, LinkedIn as well. Anywhere else people should go if they want to get in touch, learn more about you?
I mean, if you like podcasts, there's the Intended Consequences podcast. I'm opportunistic with it. So we're only doing, we shut it down for the pandemic, and whenever I come across somebody interesting, I'll interview them. So it's, a few episodes a year at this point, but, they are the, some of the most interesting people I know, and they're fun to do.
Yeah, it's a great name too. I love it. Check out the episode with the better looking Andy Cresadina. That's a great place to start. Um, yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Brian. That was awesome.
I'm so glad you invited me.